And it's because of the shadows and the light that comes from light falling on an object, say a tree, and the branches on one side it will be lighter, on the other side it will be darker because of how the light falls on the object, creating shadows and light. And of course, if you're drawing in a darker area of a tree, you'll go for a darker line. But where the light falls, you have to go with a thinner, lighter line. It just makes sense to use sensitivity of line. So it's when you really are observing something, you are not just working methodically, you are working with your heart and really looking at something, engaging with what you're seeing and trying to capture some of that. So right now I'm adding quite a lot of water, and I'm using a brush rather than just a pen, and I'm starting to work out the shadows a little bit more with that brush. I love working with shadows as well. It just gives everything a three-dimensionality if you can use it well. And shadows, I always say, they're like puzzle pieces. You have to, when you apply a shadow, look at the shape of the shadow, look at the width of it, look at how dark it is. So always be aware. I think it's about an intentionality when you're painting. Are you intentionally busy with your subject matter and really looking at it, not just trying out a new technique, but while you are trying out a new technique, you might as well observe where the highlights are, where the shadows are. So what's happening over there, I've added quite a lot of water and you can see it's puddling. So my paper is the 300-gram paper, which helps tremendously because it can absorb all of this wetness. Otherwise, it'll just not work, and you'll get that the puddles are starting to, the paper will start warping. But if you use a 300-gram paper, this is a 300-gram cold pressed paper that I'm using. Cold pressed will be a little bit of a rougher texture than the hot pressed, which is a smoother texture. So my paper can absorb it, it can handle all that water. So you can see how the shadows, how beautifully those shadows are just gently starting to shape the face so that the shape becomes three-dimensional and not a flat object. And when I do the shadows, so where it's really dark, like in that area, I would just gently pull it out into different directions. If it's too dark in one area, I'd use water and a brush, and I would just pull on it a little bit. Remember that you are, you can get to a point where you actually master the flow of the ink, and where the ink doesn't control you, but you are controlling the ink, which is a good place to get to. So yeah, I'm still just building up the shadows there and building up the face, looking carefully not to overwork by losing the highlights, because a face basically works like this. If you want it to look more three-dimensional, a face has to have lights and shadows in the right places, and the nose bridge, everything that's protruding on the face will always get a lot of light, like the nose bridge, the forehead, above the mouth, the chin that comes forward more, all of that. You have to keep the light. If you lose the light in those areas, it's really difficult to get it back. And then the shadows areas will be in all the deeper areas, areas that move inward more. So if you just feel your own face, you'll feel how deep the eyes actually go in the skull. So in those areas, there's always shadows around the eyes. Underneath the nose, there's usually a shadow. Underneath the mouth, there's a shadow. It's because of all of those places are moving in deeper, so you need to create that, and the only way to do that is to add shadows. Shadows are usually cooler, but this lovely violety color ink is so cool that I can do everything with one color, and I can leave the white areas open where I want the highlights. The tricky part is to make it go sort of a gentle nuance of tonality where you don't have harsh edges between your dark areas and your light areas. That's the most tricky part to get right. But hopefully the videos, that I make will show you how you can do that. Yeah, what else can I say? if you look at the eyes, the upper line of the upper eyelid's line is always darker than the lower eyelid. You almost don't need to do any line at the bottom. If you do it too dark at the bottom, it looks like eyeliner. It looks really unnatural. So I always sort of take care not to go there. You can see me adding shadows in the ear because it's deeper in. It needs a shadow. That's the way you show there's a deeper area. And in a deeper area, you'll always get a shadow. Oh, there's a little bit of a blotch that I'm just going to quickly work away with water. That happens. If you're quick, you can just work it away, put water on it, try to disperse the ink to different places. So you up to a certain point you can fix mistakes, but if you work too dark in the beginning and you make a mistake, then usually it's unfixable. So rather start lightly and build up your shadows as you go along, so that it's not so dark that when you make a mistake you can't do anything about it. So you can see my first layers was really light. I think that's about all I can say. You can just watch and see how I go further. That's me doing the pupil. I'm trying to leave the white, the little white highlight, the reflective nature of the light in the eye. I'm trying to leave that white because if I overwork that, it's very difficult. You can't get the white of the paper back then. I actually put too much ink on there, so I'm not, you can see me making plans there to just disperse it to different areas. I'm picking it up where the blotch is and putting it in the hair at this stage to try and correct that flaw. And this is the constant creative problem solving that you need when you do art. You'll always make mistakes. Mistakes are not an issue. Mistakes is the best way to learn. This is what I teach my students. So if you want, you can check out my website, marianabooienskinshuis.co.za. I do online classes. I do in-house, in-studio classes. And it's really true that if you want to learn art or different techniques, if you are so perfectionistic that you never want to make a mistake, art will be really difficult because it's through the messy stuff sometimes. It's through the whole process of messing up an area and realizing why you messed it up so that the next time when you do it, you're not messing up that area. How else will you learn it? So I embrace that. Embrace the fact that sometimes it's a little bit messy until you understand the technique, how much water to put on the page, how much ink to put on the brush, in this case with ink. And this is the same for watercolor. It takes many years to be a master of watercolor, many years. And the only way to get there is to, put in your hours, put in your practices. I once did some watercolor art, and I did 7 faces, portraits, and I could only use 2 because the 5 before the last two were really nice and I loved them and I could frame both. And that's the sort of quality that I would exhibit. But the 5 previous ones they were messy. I learned a lot of stuff in those works. I won't ever, I think, sell them or frame them because they were my practice runs to get to the really beautiful ones, where I gained confidence through making mistakes in the previous ones. So embrace the fact that with watercolor or ink, you'll do a lot of exercises and maybe 80% of them won't look so great. How else will you learn enough so that you know what to do and how to do it? I work quite quickly. You can see my hand is quite loose. I've done it many times, and I'm not afraid anymore. When I paint, there's no fear. I love it. I love to do it. If there's an accident or a mistake, I embrace it and I see what I can do with it. So I'm over the fear in my art, which is a wonderful gift, a place to get to where I can experiment freely. I just love that, I think that's the way I should be in my whole life, is to have no fear, in the sense of there's only one good fear. and that's the fear of God. The rest of it, I'm not sure about if there's any other good fears. I'd rather conquer all my fears in my life and be able to be bold and courageous. When I do art, to be bold and courageous. When I make videos, to be bold and courageous. Um, that's a great place to get to. I'm not there in everything, but I love that I'm there in my artworks and that it's freely created. Yeah, for me, it's a place where I can just flow. I can just flow. It's right from my heart onto the page, and it's a wonderful place to get to. But it's taken me many years to get to. So don't don't despair if you think something you do doesn't look right. In the if it's your first ink or your second ink or your third and it doesn't look right, it just means you need more practice.